Have you ever heard of an injury where the rescue effort itself actually causes most of the damage? It sounds completely backwards, right? It's a biological paradox, a self-inflicted wound that happens at the very moment of healing. Today, we're going to dive into this fascinating and frankly dangerous process, ischemia-reperfusion injury. The best way to really wrap your head around this comes straight from our source material. It describes IRI as a 1-2 punch in boxing. The first hit, it's bad, for sure, but it's the second unexpected blow that often does the real devastating damage. This metaphor, it's absolutely central to understanding everything we're about to talk about. So what are these two punches? Well, punch number one is called ischemia. That's just a technical term for when blood flow to a tissue gets cut off. But the second hit, the one that's often more damaging, is called reperfusion. And that's the moment blood flow comes rushing back. And that's the whole paradox right there. The very act of saving the tissue unleashes a second destructive attack. Okay, let's break down that first punch, the ischemic hit. When the blood stops flowing, the biggest problem right out of the gate is a lack of oxygen. Tissues and organs, they literally begin to starve. And this sets the stage for everything that's about to go wrong. If you zoom in to the cellular level, it's really a two-stage process. At first, the cells are just stunned. They're in this brief state where they're trying to survive. But that doesn't last long. It quickly turns into full-on starvation, as their energy reserves are just completely drained. They're running on fumes. What's so wild is the domino effect that happens. I mean, look at this. No oxygen means no ATP. That's the cell's energy money. Without energy, the cell gets all acidic. Its critical ion pumps just fail, and it starts swelling up with sodium and water like a water balloon that's about to pop. All of this is the damage from punch number one. And just when you think the cavalry has arrived to save the day, that's when the second punch lands. The return of blood flow, the rescue, it unleashes this wave of absolute chaos that is often far, far more destructive than the initial starvation ever was. This comparison just lays it out so perfectly. The first hit is all about what the cell is lacking, right? It's missing oxygen, it's missing energy. But the second hit, it's about a sudden, violent excess. A flood of oxygen that fuels destructive molecules, and an all-out assault by the body's own immune system. So here's the crazy part. That returning oxygen, which, is essential for life, it paradoxically becomes the raw material for destruction. The cell's powerhouses, the mitochondria, they go into this dangerous overdrive and start churning out these highly destructive molecules called reactive oxygen species, or ROS. Just think of them as tiny, toxic little particles that act like rust, corroding everything they touch inside the cell. So let's meet the main villains in this chaotic second phase. First, you've got those ROS we just mentioned, those free radicals that just tear through cell structures. Then they're joined by neutrophils. These are immune cells that rush in like this super overzealous cleanup crew, but they end up causing massive collateral damage. This combined assault damages the blood vessel lining itself, making it leaky and letting all that chaos spread. And scientists have even pinpointed some of the specific culprits here. During that starvation phase, a totally normal enzyme converts into a dangerous form called xanthine oxidase. So when oxygen comes rushing back, this enzyme turns into a super factory, just churning out those destructive ROS molecules like there's no tomorrow. And listen, this isn't just some microscopic battle happening in a few cells. This local fight can escape the initial area and cause devastating damage throughout the entire body. It's when things go systemic that we see major clinical problems. Get ready for this number because it is staggering. In a heart attack, it's not just the initial blocked artery that damages the heart muscle. Up to half, 50% of the total muscle death can happen after doctors clear the blockage. It's caused by the return of blood. That is ischemia-reperfusion injury in action. Or think about this, a blocked artery in someone's leg. When surgeons restore blood flow, the whole limb can swell up massively. This reperfusion releases a flood of toxins from all that damaged muscle, which can overwhelm the kidneys, and sometimes, tragically, it leads to amputation just to save the patient's life. And sometimes, the swelling itself becomes the problem. In something called compartment syndrome, that reperfusion swelling inside a tight muscle compartment gets so bad that it actually chokes off its own blood supply again. It creates this horrifying, vicious cycle of more ischemia, more swelling, and more injury. And in the absolute worst case scenarios, the inflammatory signals from the injury site just spill into the bloodstream. It creates what doctors call a chemokine storm, an overwhelming cry for help that goes systemic. This can trigger a catastrophic chain reaction, leading to multiple organ dysfunction syndrome, or MODS, where perfectly healthy organs far away from the initial injury just start to fail. And this is often fatal. There's even a point of no return. It's called the no-reflow phenomenon. This happens when that first ischemic hit is so severe and lasts for so long that it completely destroys the tiniest blood vessels, the capillaries. At that point, even if you clear the main blockage, blood simply cannot get back into the tissue. The damage is done. It's irreversible. So you can see the massive challenge for doctors, right? How do you fight back? How do you restore that precious blood flow without triggering the catastrophic second punch? Researchers call this the search for the Goldilocks recipe, a therapy that's just right. Now, one of the most fascinating discoveries in this whole field was something called preconditioning. Scientists found, and this is wild, that exposing a tissue to very short, controlled bursts of ischemia could actually protect it from a much longer, more damaging event later on. It's like the body learns how to brace itself for the bigger punch. So this idea led to tons of clinical trials. Strategies like remote preconditioning, where you briefly cut off blood flow in an arm to protect the heart, or infusing protective drugs have all been tested. But as you can see from this table, the results have been, well, pretty disappointing, or mixed at best. Finding an effective, reliable therapy has been just incredibly elusive. And that right there is the bottom line. Despite understanding the mechanisms in incredible detail, finding that Goldilocks recipe to safely reintroduce blood and prevent that second hit, well, it remains one of the great unsolved challenges in all of medicine. Which leaves us with this final, critical question. The body's instinct to survive is obviously powerful, but in this one case, its rescue response is also its own worst enemy. The ultimate goal, the thing everyone is working on, is to figure out how we can intervene and teach the body to accept help, to heal, without delivering that devastating second blow.